All right, so we're all good to go. So, hi everybody. Thanks for joining in and watching us. Want to welcome Malla Nunn to our group today. So, thanks so much for joining us, Malla. Malla was born and raised in Swaziland on the far edges of the British Empire, and she attended a boarding school specially set up for mixed race children. The students at the school spent their time learning the Bible, breaking the rules, and then lying about it. In common with most colonial institutions, stealing, fighting, and violence were common. It was in this charged atmosphere that she developed a fascination with bad behaviour, risk, and punishment. After her family migrated to Australia to escape apartheid, Nunn graduated with a double degree in English and history and then earned a Master of Arts in Theatre Studies from Villanova University. Faced with a life of chronic underemployment, she dabbled in acting and screenwriting, and she wrote and directed 3 award-winning films, including Servant of the Ancestors, which won Best Documentary Award at film festivals in Chicago, Los Angeles, and Zanzibar, and was also shown on national TV in Australia. She married in a traditional Swazi ceremony. Her bride price was 18 cows, and she now lives and works in a weatherboard house with a tin roof and olive tree in a garden in Sydney. And so her latest novel is Sugartown Queens, just showing my copy there to everyone, and just want to mention as well that thanks to Ellen and Unwin, anyone watching today who asks a question will have a chance to win a copy of Sugartown Queens. So please type any questions you have in comments. So thanks so much, Malla, for joining us. Just wondering if you want to start off by telling us a little bit about Sugartown Queens.
All right. Okay, so Sugartown Queens is my second young adult novel, although I kind of have a bit of a trouble with the young adult tag, just because I think that it can be read by anyone kind of over the age of 12.
Yeah, exactly.
And I read YA books, and I'm well over the age of
well, I have
young.
I have to say, I'm well over 12 as well, and really enjoyed your book and enjoy reading YA novels myself.
Yes, yeah, I quite like, and that's the reason I sort of started writing YA novels, is I had a teenage daughter who kept giving me stuff like, We Were Liars, and she gave me some John Green, and she kept saying, "Oh, these are fantastic stories," and I read them, and I was like, "She's right, they're really great," and they're not. I don't know why I thought they were going to be slightly childish, because I haven't read YA, I hadn't read that in a long time, so I was really interested in kind of, and also when you pass a certain stage, I'd just forgotten what it was like. I didn't think a lot of times about what it was like to grow up. Yeah. It is quite challenging. Just to grow up is quite challenging. So, so Sugartown Queens, there they are, my little queens, is about 3 girls who live in a township in South Africa. And the township, well, they're also called shanty towns. It's just on the outskirts of Durban, and it's very, very poor. It's called, in South Africa, it would be called and not illegal, but an unnamed settlement. In other words, people have just made their own town without any government permission, and that's just grown up into its own space. Yeah. And so I've got 3 girls, and they live this quite precarious existence, kind of within Kui, of a beautiful city on the beach where people have money and they have nothing almost. So it's really about the challenges of growing up in a place where it's hard to grow up. And my main character, Malla, she's actually mixed, so she's living mostly in a black township. So it's a little bit about that too, but really it's about her digging up who her family is and finding out more about her family.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction. Just wondering if maybe you have a little bit of Sugartown Queens you'd like to read to us.
Oh, right. Okay. So I'm going to be very radical, and I'm just going to start at the beginning. Okay, so we do the first 2 pages of Sugartown Queens, and it's a bit of the setup too. So Sugartown Queens, chapter 1. White stars dance across my field of vision. The blindfold is tied too tight, and I want to rip it off. Instead, I sit and try to rub the goosebumps off my arms. It's cold inside our 1-room house, the cracks in the corrugated iron walls wide enough to let the air in from outside. It's winter, so we've stuffed rags into the spaces we can reach. I shiver and wait patiently for the 2 surprises that my mother has planned. The thing is, not all surprises are good. Happy 15th birthday, Amanda. My mother, Annalisa, who refuses to be called mother in any of South Africa's 11 official languages, unties a blindfold and hands me a bowl of lumpy porridge decorated with multicolored sprinkles, icing sugar, and whatever canned fruit was in the cupboard. This year's fruit is pears in syrup, a step up from last year's ancient mandarins. Loaded porridge is the closest I will ever get to a birthday cake. A blessing. Annalisa is a terrible cook and a worse baker. Thank you. I take the bowl, surprise number 1, and our fingers touch, hers pale, mine brown, both with long fingers, elegant, waiting for jewelry or a piano. In another life, maybe. Our room is too small for a piano, and there is no money for jewelry. Today is extra special for 2 reasons. It's your birthday, plus. She takes a deep breath and cups my cheek with a shaky hand. Last night, I had a vision. It was wonderful, but we had to do our part to make it come true. The lumpy porridge sticks in my throat and stops me from cursing. Annalisa's visions have taken us into the cane fields to sing to the stars at midnight. They have told us to eat eggs and only eggs for 4 days in a row. They have led us into the heart of the storm to wait for the lightning to send us instructions. The instructions never came. My mother is out of her mind.
Thanks for reading that. I'm just wondering how much of things you may have experienced growing up is in this book.
All right. I think if it's not directly my experience, and it's certainly also experiences of my aunts, uncles, and everyone I know
Yeah.
because of the community that I grew up in South Africa.
Mm,
But certainly Amandla being mixed is very much based on the experience of being mixed in South Africa. It is always a really awkward, an awkward
mm,
space, because the great political thing is that black is black and white is white, and they never mix. And
mm.
then all these mixed race people start turning up, and it's like, well, actually, it seems that they do mix.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got quite a few people watching now, which is really great. So, got some questions coming through.
Mm-hmm.
So I might start on some of the members' questions.
Sure.
So, Kelly said that it looks really great, your book. She wonders if you chose the title.
Oh, right. I actually didn't. I ended up choosing the title way at the end of the book.
Okay.
So I think it used to be called, in its first or second draft, it used to be called Zulu Queens. And then I was like, that doesn't quite fit. But I always knew the town was called Sugar Town because it was on the edge of a sugar field, a cane field. And then I thought, and then one of my characters in the book, which just often happens to me when I love it, one of the characters says, listen, we're Sugar Town Queens. And Sugar Town Queens never back down from a fight. And I thought, that's the title of the book.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
kind of chose it, but really my character goodness chose it for me. Yeah.
No, that's great. And Marjot's got a good question. She wonders, do you think that teenagers or adults are the more critical readers?
Look, I think that that's really, really highly individual. I think I've come across some teenagers who are just ruthless. Ruthless. My daughter being one of them. And then I think there's a, I think there's a kind of an openness to teenagers that I don't think exists really very much with adults. And it's because there's just an openness about them trying to figure things out anyway. And they're often likely to ask really quite simple questions, often that I even haven't thought of. So I think critically, I just think that teenagers are just more open to disagreeing with things and talking about things, but probably not even in very much of a critical manner, more in a questioning way.
Yeah.
Like they don't quite understand something. So if they, hey, look, can you explain that? Well, I think an adult, I guess I'm to answer your question, I think maybe adults are slightly more critical because they have more of they have a different language for asking the questions, and often those questions are, well, I don't understand how this happened. But no, I find all readers, I love talking to them because it's such a solitary thing when I'm writing that I can't cover every base. So it's really interesting to see what I've left out or
Yeah.
haven't quite covered. Yeah.
Yeah. And Jill wonders if you chose the cover of your book.
No, I didn't, but I got lucky. I
Yeah.
got lucky in that my agent sent me, actually, my editor in America sent me 7 different
Oh, so you had a
covers of
bit of a
7 different
choice.
artists.
Yeah.
And I liked this, her name's completely out of my, she's absolutely brilliant. So I saw her work and I just thought, this is incredible. But there was another kind of artist work which was very dreamy with girls with lots of flowers in their hair. And I got back to my agent and I said, look, I think it's Lacey Jordan. I love her stuff. It's really bright and colorful. But I also like that other softer style. And my agent said, no, I'm done with girls with flowers in their hair. You can't have it. So we got hold of her and we basically, said, look, we didn't tell her anything. We just knew her style, which was very bold. And she was really interesting. She came back with a less refined cover, then a more refined cover. And then you get a note saying, this is the final cover. And that's it.
Yeah. It is a very stunning cover though, and very very bright and stands out as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think she's done a wonderful job. And also what I loved about it when I saw the final thing is I was like, wow, she really read the book because goodness looks like goodness. This girl, she looks like goodness in the book.
Yeah.
Amanda looks like Amanda. A little bit looks like, I was just like amazing. She obviously just got the vibe. And
Yeah.
so she's done, I love it.
I love the lipstick as well, the bright lipstick.
Yeah. She's terrific. So she does incredible. She's a wonderful artist.
Yeah.
So Lacey Jordan, I'm pretty sure her name is. So no, I didn't choose the cover. I chose the artist, and then you just kind of. I have had times where we've chosen an artist, and I've quite liked the cover, and the publishing company said, "No, we don't like it."
Yeah.
Yeah. So you go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
They come up with something else.
Jill's wondering what your favorite genre is to read, and I'm wondering if maybe you've read something lately that you'd like to recommend to us.
Okay, so I read very broadly across a whole lot of genres, and it often depends if I just pick something up kind of in passing. And, so last year what happened was my another book that I wrote got on the Prime Minister's shortlist. So what I did is I then read through all the books on the shortlist that were with me, and every one of them was just absolutely stunning. And I've literally drawn a blank about what the books are. But I read across a whole lot of genres. I love historical fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love crime. I also like things that are, like Underground Railway by Colin Whitehead, is that his name? I do tend to read quite a lot of. There's Neil Grant just wrote the Honeyman and the Hunter, and that's about a boy who goes back to India to discover his kind of past. I read a book called Pet, which is that big, but really interesting. And I'm so sorry, I can't actually pronounce. She's got a very East African name, but that's a really interesting book, and it's really small, and it covers a whole lot of different topics, but with such confidence and ease that you never feel like you're being preached to about the subject of the book. So I also read Helena's How It Feels to Float, which is about depression and mental illness, and that was actually pretty stunning. The Power of a Good Dumpling by Wei Chim, also fantastic. I mean, just look at the Prime Minister's Literary Awards in the young adult section, and every book is absolutely a standout. This is how this is the end. This is how it ends. Every one of those books is absolutely wonderful.
Well, thanks for sharing those recommendations. Kelly said young adult category is fantastic, and her daughter and her really loved Present Darkness and
Oh,
are
right.
looking forward to this one. So I'm wondering if maybe you want to tell people who may not have heard of you before a little bit about other books you've written.
All right. So the first four books I wrote were actually South African crime books,
Mm,
and they were set at the beginning of the apartheid era, which is the era of very strict racial segregation, which came in about 1952. Look, it was always racially segregated. It's just that they decided,
mm,
you know what, we're just going to make this harder for everyone.
mm,
So we're going to bring in more laws. So I had four books set in that era with a detective called Emmanuel Cooper, and I'm actually so excited because the pilot episode for the TV, the possible, fingers crossed, possible TV series that's just come through from a really terrific writer called Jim McNamara in LA,
yeah.
and he's just done such an amazing job. And
Mm,
I love it when somebody, like, I don't feel proprietorial. He took a book called A Beautiful Place to Die, and he made it into the first series, and he wrote the first episode. And he's just done things that I would never have thought to do. And I love it when people do that. I just like, oh,
mm,
clever. And there
mm.
were a couple of times I thought, well, I wish I had that in the book. Jim's come up with things. So yeah, so I did the four crime novels and actually really loved those. And then I had an idea then to go ahead and write YA. And my first YA novel was released about 2 years ago, and it's called When the Ground is Hard. And then my second YA novel, of course, is Sugartown Queens.
Mm,
So yeah, so that's my potted history of my books.
yeah. So your first books weren't YA books.
No, no,
Oh.
they were under the banner of adult crime. I've had
Mm,
teenage readers,
mm,
but generally they would have been certainly handpicked and sold to people slightly older than in the teenage bracket. So yeah, they were sort of adults. Yeah, they were adult crime novels.
yeah.
Uh, and there weren't trigger warnings then, but I would hate to see the trigger warnings for the
Yeah.
crime novels.
Yeah. And were they a series? They looked like
Yeah, they
yeah.
were a series. They were a series.
Yeah.
There were four books with the same detective and his team of people who then kind of look into four different big crimes over the books.
Mm. And are they open for you to write more, or did the last one sort of
No,
end
the
it up?
last one came out and it was like, oh, that's really sad. But then I didn't stay sad for very long because I got this idea for a YA novel and then I just went on to that.
Mm,
But I have absolutely loved going back and being in the TV writers' room, which is just such a blast, you
yeah.
know. So many
Yeah.
clever people are throwing ideas around. It's absolutely one, and I've never written like that ever. It's always such a solitary thing for me. My
Mm.
agent weighs in, my husband weighs in, and then I just tell everyone to shut up and I go and do my work and I come back out of my cave. So yeah, the TV writing's been terrific in that it's great to have all the input of different writers. So that's been a huge amount of fun. But now I'm back to my writing cave where
Mm.
it's just me and the screen.
Yeah, yeah. Jill's wondering if when you first came to Australia, if you faced much racism.
Look, Australia was really odd for us because we came and nobody really knew, no one could really pick us.
Mm,
You
mm,
know, and that had to have been more on the light skin spectrum and with
mm,
green eyes. So, well, Aboriginal people always were like, "Hey, sister, where are you from?"
yeah.
There we go, got me. Um, but my parents got a job working at an Aboriginal hostel in Perth. It was for boys who
Oh,
come
okay.
from, yeah,
Mm,
it was Port Catacoota. So they came from down north to Catacoota, and where Australians didn't recognise us, we didn't feel singled out. We didn't feel any
mm,
racism. We would go to the shops with the boys. It's like a switch being flicked. The shopkeeper would follow us around.
mm,
People would step out of our way. It was like,
mm.
and suddenly it was like, oh, that, that's like South Africa, except these people know who they are, where they
Yeah,
don't know who we are.
yeah.
So, racism, yeah, we saw that when we were out with the Aboriginal boys.
Mm,
Absolutely. You just
mm,
got, the vibe was really bad.
mm,
And you suddenly thought, oh, so what happens in South Africa also happens here. But for us personally, as a family, and again, being on, people already thought maybe we were Italian or we were something else. We were able to kind of free float a bit without too much racism. And weirdly, the most amount of racism that ever cropped is when someone thought I was Aboriginal.
Oh, really?
Isn't that weird? Really odd, really
Yeah.
odd. But you know, for us, we were lucky. It was like a liberation. It was so wonderful to be able to walk down the street, go into any shop, order anything, and not be stopped or told you weren't allowed. So
yeah. Kelly wonders if you think you'll do a series for kids like the Cooper series.
Not thought about it, although it's interesting. My husband actually said to me the other day, why don't you think about doing a South African crime series, but for young people?
For young, yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. I've got this idea that I'm working on. Once I get rid of that, maybe. But I think that would be a tremendous amount of fun, actually, to do that.
Yeah. And Jill's wondering if you have a writing routine.
If when I can afford to have a routine, I do. And
do you have another job as well as your writing?
No, I left that up to my husband.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a joke when we go to writers' festivals and people say, what do you need to become a full-time writer? And the answer is a partner with a job. That's a joke. Because it's actually quite the trick. I mean, I get paid a reasonable amount of money for my work, which is really great. But my routine would really be, because I was also bringing up kids for the whole time I was writing the Cooper series. And I love it when we're going, a real writer writes every day. A real writer has routine. I'm like, okay, lady, well, sir, is this before or after dinner? Because I would just have to fit in with what was happening with my kids. If it was a busy day and they had sport, I would try to write as much in the morning. So my life, I had to fit all my writing around being a mother of two kids. And when I first started writing, there were two kids under 2. So, you know, but my routine, what I ask of myself every day is that if I don't write in my actual manuscript, that I write notes. So I feel like I need to keep engaged with the story. And that's what I do. And I do try to, you know, especially the last bit of a novel where I always know I'm coming to the end because I just look at it, I just go, this is all rubbish. I have to burn it. I hate it. And then I go, oh, you're almost finished. That's why. Because when it's finished, you know, it's the thing. And then suddenly it's, oh, is it a failure? Is it worked or not? But I try to push on to that edge. And then I just have to push through that at the end because, look, everyone feels that their writing's lacking something. You know, but to finish is the charm, I think.
And Belinda's wondering if when you start writing, do you know how your story's going to end?
Okay, so I never know. I've got an idea about the story and what it's about. And I'll start writing and I don't know where it ends. So I let the story take me. But generally what happens about halfway through, this has happened with every book I've had, I will wake up like almost from a dream, and I will have the last sentence of the book.
Okay.
So I'll write that down. I'll go, oh my gosh. So she's in the water. Because how does she get? And then weirdly, my mind then kind of tries to work its way to that last sentence. So yeah, I don't know the story, but somewhere when I start hacking my way through, the last sentence will come to me, and that is sort of like a north, like a compass.
Yeah.
In a way.
And Jill's wondering if you've got another book that you're currently working on.
Yeah. Well, Jill, I have 3, and
3.
I blame COVID. Completely blame COVID. I have 3, and it's crazy. They're 3 different genres.
Oh,
it's like
really?
I don't want to do anything by halves. So one's a historical romance, right? One's YA, and the other one is unclassifiable. And when I say to my agent, you know, I'm not sure what it is, she goes, oh God. Don't tell me that, Malla. Tell me what it is. But I don't quite know. And I'm sort of I know by the end of this year I will have a manuscript. I'm just not sure which one's going to push me all the way to the end. It's
Yeah.
a slightly uncomfortable situation.
Sounds very interesting, though.
Oh, it's good because I love it. I love ideas and stories. So each one of the ideas and stories kind of like, I'll spend like a week in love with a historical romance and I'll go, yeah. And then I'll go onto the YA and I'll go, oh, this is awesome. And a week later, I'm back onto the thing that I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So I'm having a little bit of an up and down time, and I think maybe it's just because I'm actually feeling a bit up and down a little bit. Like all the things that I take for granted I'm not able to do, and I love to travel, and I haven't been able to travel for almost 2 years. So I think I'm just a little bit. I'm a little bit mad.
Yeah.
My husband would say I'm crazy right now.
Belinda's wondering, of all your characters, have you had a favourite to write?
I really dug Cooper, my detective. He came to me and I was like, boy, oh boy, you're my man, you know. And also I realized what I absolutely loved about him is I could put him in a drawer, I could take him out, and he was still the same guy, you know. He wasn't like, oh Malla, you left me alone and I really need support. He was such a confident character.
Yeah.
He knew himself so well that I really loved working with him. He wasn't a giver. Like he didn't sit me down and say, hey Mom, let me tell you about myself. He didn't ever do that. He was like, work for it, lady. Yeah, work for it. And I did. But I loved writing him. And I've got to say, I really loved Malla in Sugartown Queens, the main girl.
Yeah.
I loved her too, because she started out quite shy in the first drafts. And then by the second draft, I was like, oh no, she's actually got a lot of backbone. And I just was great to have her take control of more things. So yeah, she's my current favorite because she surprised me.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if you'd always wanted to be a writer, and if you could maybe tell us a little bit about how you got your first book published.
All right. Did I always want to be a writer? Look, I was always writing bits and pieces. I remember in high school, a friend of mine wrote like a poem for the high school magazine. I thought, I'm going to do that. I'm going to write something. And I wrote a short story, and I literally was so horrified and embarrassed that I just didn't put it in. I didn't put it into publication. Went all the way through university. I saw lots of friends getting stuff published. I just didn't have the confidence to do it. I really felt like, I'm not really up for it. And then I did my master's in theatre studies, which is a hoot because it's all actory stuff, and we had to write our own monologues for a whole lot of things, and we had to get together with people and write scenes, and that was very freeing because it was such a loose environment that I wrote a couple of monologues and did a few things. And my main writing teacher came up to me and said, don't take this the wrong way, but you have a real talent for melodrama. I was like, uh-huh. He goes, oh, no. My daughter writes for General Hospital, and she's got a fantastic life and she makes a lot of money. So don't be embarrassed by that. I think what he was saying is you will never be a literary author, is what he was saying to me, which is fine. And then when I was spent a couple of years in New York, I just did a screenwriting course. And it was really when I came back to Perth and I sort of had a little bit of time, but then I started making films. It was after it was actually, I think having children can be very, very difficult. But for me, it was a really liberating thing because I thought, I'm just going to write this stuff when I'm looking after kids. And if it sinks, I don't have to really kind of just put it to the one side. And that was a beautiful place to die, my first crime novel. And I gave it to a friend because my husband works in the film business. This is
okay.
Handy. Okay. And he gave it to a friend who was an agent. And it was like 20 pages. And she said, if you finish this novel, I will read it. I'll give you feedback. And if I like it, I'll represent it. I was like, fantastic. So I finished it. And she did. She said, I'll pick it up. And she very good for her. She got me into Catherine Drayton's books, and Catherine Drayton works for a place called Inkwell, which is a New York agency. So in a weird way, everything worked out for me really beautifully.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, who do you compare yourself to? Because I know writers who have made millions of dollars.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I compare myself to them, I go, oh, poor me. I've got 7 books and I've still got a mortgage, and you know, so it depends who you compare yourself to. But I've had a brilliant, beautiful run, and I love my job. I can say that without reservation. I absolutely love being a writer.
Yeah.
It's a privilege, and it's a privilege to talk to people who read books, and so yeah, it's been good. But that first book did take me 4 years to write. Again, like, did I have laundry to do? Well, if I did laundry. Then I would go and write 2 pages.
Yeah.
So that was a 4-year hike, but it was good. It was good, and I'm glad I did it.
And Mary Lou's wondering what you find is easier. Is it easier being an author, a screenwriter, or a director of film?
I find just author.
Yeah.
Because you get left alone.
Yeah.
You're totally left alone. And also, because there's no real pressure, like on a film set, you know that every minute that ticks by, money's being wasted, and there's dozens of people waiting around. So this is pressure I didn't enjoy. I enjoyed film. I love film, and I love working with actors and stuff. But it always felt a little bit like, yeah, just pressure. I didn't really enjoy. Screenwriting is heaps of fun. That's really good, but it's a different language. So I find I'm more settled with the language of books and novels. I just that's my place. That's my place. It's a place I feel easiest.
Yeah. And Ray said she's South African. And your books really sound great. She's definitely adding them to her list. She wonders what made you decide to set all your books in South Africa rather than Australia.
Look, when I was going out with Manuel Cooper books to do publicity and stuff, there was always someone in the audience who'd come running up to me afterward, and they would say, "Oh my God, I'm an Africa tragic." And you know, an Africa tragic is a person who cannot get away from Africa. No matter how hard they try. And even though I was born there, I am absolutely an Africa tragic. I really am. There's something about that place that still has a part of my imagination that feels like the deepest part of me belongs there. And in Australia, I've got to say, when I go up to the Kimberley in Western Australia, that deepness, that note of history and blood and everything, it's just there in the Kimberley for me. And when I go back to South Africa, I'm also even more insane than I usually am. But it just, they're all set in South Africa because that location absolutely just taps me on the shoulder.
Yeah.
And it says, hey, listen, here, I've got a story for you. And the Emmanuel Cooper, the very first book, A Beautiful Place to Die, I was actually in South Africa having made a documentary there. And we were standing by the Crocodile River, just near Kruger and near Komati Port. And there's something, it just breaks my heart open in the same way as the Kimberley breaks my heart open. To see it, it's so, it's just so breathtaking, you know, and you just feel in the presence of something, actually. So it was my husband and I standing at the side of the Crocodile River, and I go, oh my God, do you know what? I bet this might be a great place for someone to find someone's dumped a body in the river. It was like someone handed me a photograph, and they were like, it's a police captain and he's been thrown in the river. I came back to Australia, did all the notes, and I was like, oh, I wonder how the police captain got there. But again, I was in South Africa, and that location and that thing just came to me there. So yeah, I've been asked a number of times. I don't know, it's in my blood. I just can't. Yeah. Although I am trying to break out of the mold. But it just, I don't know, there's just real blood for me there. There's real, power in that place.
So the 3 books you mentioned before that you're writing at the moment, are they all set in South Africa as well?
So no, the one that is, I don't know what it is. I don't even know where that's set. This is how bad it is. Right. Where's it set? I don't know. Partly in heaven, partly on earth. Just insane. And then the YA actually is set, but it's in a fantasy African landscape.
Okay.
So that is African, and the
Mm.
historical romance is in America.
Okay.
So yeah,
So a little bit branching out to things a little bit different.
Yes. I think because I also think people are a little bit scared of African stuff.
Mm.
I think they think, oh, this is going to make me feel terrible or guilty, or it's going to be a hard read or something.
Yeah.
So I really do think that there's probably just a little bit of a press there. And my agent has said, you know, maybe you think about writing something in America or England or something, or even Australia. But I'm starting to branch out in that a little bit. But I think that one of my manuscripts is always going to be, always going to be a sort of African, South African.
And what about research? Do you do, like for Sugartown Queens, how much research did you need to do?
Yeah. You know, unlike with the Stephen King thing about writing, is that our job is to make stuff up. So I make a lot of stuff up, and then I kind of double check that that's not ridiculous. But with Sugartown Queens, it was like, I mean, South Africans who are listening here will know that it's, you drive out of a city and then you will drive through shanty towns, you'll drive through poor villages and everything. So everything's very close together. So I always knew, I kind of felt like I know those places relatively well, not as an insider, but I know them. And then I did check with some cousins and a friend of mine who goes back to South Africa every couple of years. Well, he normally goes back every year, but COVID stopped him from going. And one of my main concerns was, is are interracial relationships still a bit of a bind in South Africa? Do they still cause a problem? Because he's black and his wife is white. And he said, we have been spat at in supermarkets.
Oh, really? Even now, still?
This is 3 years ago.
Yeah,
someone spat at them. And he said, but then, Malla, this is a confounding thing about South Africa. They've also had people come up to them and say, good for you. You're building a new world. This is what we need. And he goes, you just don't know where to go with it. You know, you're outraged, but you also kind of feel that this connection where people know that it's kind of a new world being built. So the research was often, it's really just me calling aunties, calling cousins, calling my friends, you know, different friends, and just kind of saying, am I off beam on this one?
Yeah.
Tell me, because I haven't been back to South Africa for many years, but I kind of still have that community, aunts, uncles there still.
And is it set in like modern times? Is that?
Yes. Yeah. So one thing I actually loved with Sugartown Queens is, like, I was set in this poor township on the edge of, you know, Durban, and every time we went through any places, or even like dusty little town like in Tlangano, where some of my family are from, there's always somebody on a mobile phone. So I just thought, oh, great. So my character, Goodness, is the one that's got like the best iPhone, and she can call everyone, and she's always got service and stuff like that. So yeah, it is modern, and there's all those things that come in there. So a young South African girl is really interested. I mean, she will know who Kanye West is. She will know Beyonce. She will know all the people, you know, she'll know Makeba. She'll know a whole lot of, because they're connected too in the world now, the way we are. They may not have, you know, reliable internet, but people have mobile phones. They watch TV. So yeah, so I wanted to make this one modern because I wanted to feel like it had a message that was about now.
Yeah. And what do you hope readers will love about Sugartown Queens?
I hope they love my girls. I really do hope they'll just have a great time with them. And I hope they come away with this kind of feeling that, you know, life is really hard for a lot of people. And one of the biggest resources we have is friends and friendships. And mine was specifically about female friendships. because I read quite a lot of like different things, but that made me slightly uncomfortable because females always seem to be in competition for men, as if men are like these glorious beings, like got it. And I was like, what about just because I had incredibly good friendships when I was in high school that I'm still friends with, who are like, and we hung out together all the time, and they were like my rocks and my guides and everything else. So I wanted to write a book that was specifically about the strength of female friendship and how that can pull you through. So I hope that people don't think of this as, oh my God, it's set in a poor shanty town, but it's about three kick-ass girls who get stuff done, and they're friends and they make a difference in their lives. So that's what I want people to kind of get that vibe.
Yeah, and I have to agree with reading it myself. Really, really loved the characters and the relationships. That's what really stood out for me in your book. Yeah. So, thanks so much for joining us. It's been great chatting to you. I just wondered if you can tell people how they can maybe keep in touch with what you're up to and.
All right. Well, I've got I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, but also I've got a website, which is just nunn.com. So we've posted a lot of things. I've yet to post. I've just been so lazy, but I've got to give my tech person all the reviews that have come through for Sugar Town Queens, which I'm incredibly pleased by. I'm so happy that people have kind of responded to this book. So yeah, but check out my website. I said on my Instagram, I post a lot of stuff there. But yeah, my website's probably starting tomorrow when I actually update it. I don't update it. Who am I kidding? I've got no idea. I can barely switch on the computer. But my tech person Jules will update it for me tomorrow.
Well, thanks so much, and thanks to everyone who joined in and asked some questions.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.